have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And as you all know, Doreen Ravi was convicted of bias crimes against Tyler Clemente and was sentenced to 30 days in New Jersey to jail, where he could have gotten 10 years.
We'll discuss the ins and outs of that. I suspect we may have some nuances and differences of opinion.
We'll see.
But we'll see. The NAACP, in much more exciting and interesting news, came out for same-sex marriage last week.
And this past weekend, the Speaker of the New York City Council, the second most powerful person in New York, Christine Quinn, married her longtime partner, Kim Catullo, with a lot of political heavyweights on hand.
It's graduation time at schools all over America, and a Nevada transgender teen had to fight to walk down the lawn to his graduation with the boys.
Yeah. A gay artist has gotten back his little daughters after a year of fighting false charges from anti-gay relatives that he had raped the kids.
Charming. Also in the charming category, a Mississippi legislator wants the Levitical code imposed on gay people, the death penalty. And there's a North Carolina pastor who's pursuing that line,
Absolutely.
too.
The things are getting out of hand. I'm going to review a new musical at the Public Theater about a 1940 Brooklyn commune where Auden, Carson McCullers, Benjamin Britten, and Gypsy Rose Lee, among others, lived.
We are taping on Harvey Milk Day. It is his birthday as we tape, but it's really only celebrated in California at the moment. But it is celebrated. We have a couple of little stories on that.
Officially, and our guest is curator Jonathan D. Katz on the first LGBT art museum.
You'll remember him as the co-curator of the Hide-Seek exhibit that was at the National Portrait Gallery of the Smithsonian and caused such an uproar a year or so ago, and he was here, and now he's back telling us about the first official lesbian and gay and trans. They have trans exhibits coming up, even though they call themselves the Gay and Lesbian Art Museum. But first, Doreen Ravi in New Jersey. This has certainly been at the top of the news for the last couple of days as we're taping.
Well, here's the thing. Just for those of you who weren't able to watch it as it was unfolding, the judge in this case sounded very tough. And he was reviewing the case and the evidence, and you were thinking, wow, he's going to throw the book at this kid. And you listen to the statements from the parents of Tyler Clemente, the mom and dad, the brother of Tyler Clemente, and then of course there was a statement from the parents of Darun. But you're still thinking, ooh, this is going to be, and then he hands down a sentence of 30 days in jail and a $10,000 fine. Basically, he's going to be on probation for probation for 3 years
and 300 hours of community service.
Yes.
So
and the $10,000 is supposed to be donated to an anti-bullying group.
Yeah. So
and the prosecution is going to appeal, and the defense is going to appeal the verdict.
Prosecution, not enough of a sentence. Defense, too much of a sentence.
They're saying that even though he was convicted on 15 counts and certainly guilty of the cover-up, for sure, that this law is out of hand. Now, the judge did refer to the law, the hate crimes law, the way it's written, as muddled. He also said, you're not guilty. I don't think you hated him. You're guilty of a bias crime. You're also guilty of, what did he say?
Colossal insensitivity, I think.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. There are a number of reactions to this. Certainly the overwhelming reaction from a lot of people, including Christine Quinn, Speaker of the New York City Council, was that this was a travesty. That
A slap on the wrist.
This was not a harsh enough sentence.
On the other hand.
But that was based on really thinking of Darun Ravi as responsible for the death of Tyler Clementi.
And people need to understand that on an official basis in this case, the suicide was not a part of the case
At all.
At all. It was about invasion of privacy.
Plus which, we don't know enough about the suicide. We don't know for sure it was a suicide. We haven't seen the note he left. We don't know
What are you
what
saying?
any
He fell off the bridge?
I don't know. The point is we don't know. We haven't seen enough. We don't know enough, and we don't know the other contributing factors. And
wait a minute. I'm not trying to be stupid about this, but I mean, you're saying it's even possible that he was with somebody who got pushed off the bridge.
no, I'm saying we just don't know. No one saw him go off the bridge.
Well, he did leave that one message before he left, which is sort of goodbye
Sort of.
to everybody.
And he left a note, which we haven't seen.
No.
I'm not saying that he didn't commit suicide. I'm just saying we don't know enough about the circumstances of his death to be able to charge Darun Ravi, nor was he charged.
Right.
And people leaped to this conclusion that Darun Ravi should be held responsible for his death, and therefore this sentence was a travesty.
And his mother, Tyler Clementi's mother, certainly documented, because they got to see all these emails and tweets and things that Darun had done and things like that, and sort of made the case for all this stuff is what led up to my son, killing himself. Now, as we've talked about, she doesn't take any responsibility for being pretty anti-gay herself when she first found out that he was gay.
And if you read things like the New Yorker profile, which was quite extensive, you get a much stronger picture of Tyler Clementi than we get from, again, these knee-jerk reactions.
Now, of course, one of the things that the judge and the parents, Tyler Clementi's parents and everything, says, Darun, you've never apologized for this, you've never said you're sorry.
That's technically not true, by the way.
But of course, he doesn't want to admit any guilt or remorse because he doesn't think he committed a crime.
Exactly.
And so, that's what he's going to be appealing to.
He's certainly been given legal advice not to say anything and not to do anything like that. And after he was convicted, he did make a statement of remorse. So that has been overlooked. But really what the judge talked about and the reason for the sentence he got was this business of the cover-up, and that was heinous. And I think it's an appropriate sentence, and he could even have gotten a little more, maybe a few months instead of 1 month, for the fact that he tampered with evidence, he deleted emails or tried to.
He lied about things.
He lied. He tried to tamper with the witness, the woman who was his main cohort in this, and certainly he should be liable for all those acts. So,
so what some people are saying, who are defending the 30-day sentence, are saying, this kid's life has been turned completely upside down, and he's been made an example. And of course, he's paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawyers' fees. Now, the guy's on the front page of the New York Times above the fold. There he is as the poster boy for hate crimes, essentially.
Right.
And that's what has that. It's like what they say sometimes to some politicians. You've lost your office, you've been disgraced, and everything. So you don't go to jail for that long because life as you know it is over.
Yes, if he had, this all happened at a time when there were a number of young gay male suicides, some female, being talked about. This happened to be a particular case that hit the news. Therefore, it stood out and he was talked about a lot. And would he have been if if Tyler hadn't killed himself, if it had been a girl, if he had just been seen as a college prankster.
And part of it is that there was no like violence in this. Now, I'm not saying that, there's not other ways to commit violence against people, and exposing someone on a camera is a horrible act, but there was no physical violence involved in terms of the in terms of the bias crime, which is.
And he didn't. And again, no one is excusing what Darun did.
Right. I mean,
what he did was bad, should have entailed some kind of punishment by the school or the courts. It's not acceptable behavior. But he didn't go after him to harass him. He didn't call him names. He didn't bully him in the sense that we see a lot of other people bullied.
Tyler's mother was saying, "Why? A lot of you knew about this in the school community. Why didn't you do something about it?"
Well, and there's a classic
Campus Pride,
story.
the organization, is saying, college students, faculty, staff, and community members, we can't be bystanders when we see this going on. And if that's what comes out of this case, is that people get a greater consciousness of this kind of attack on each other. It's not funny to do it's certainly not funny. Darun, when he was doing it, thought it was funny that he was going to film this guy.
Exactly.
It's not funny. It hurts people. So
I'm sure there will be some of that impact, but to think that this case is going to wipe that kind of behavior out is...
it's going to make people think twice, I think, because don't forget, people are shooting
for a little time.
People are shooting things around on their cameras and their cell phones and everything else.
And they still are.
Yes, but there's the potential there for prosecution. Maybe, actually, Danny O'Donnell, our friend in the New York State legislature, has introduced a cyberbullying bill, an anti-cyberbullying bill, and now has the backing of Governor Cuomo. We don't have the details on this legislation yet, but that's going forward.
There are horrible cases where people are hounded online, especially in high school or middle school. Really ugly stuff and saying stuff about people, and that kind of stuff, if we can stop that in one way or another, that would be great. I don't think that's what was happening here. But certainly this verdict is, the sentence is controversial.
And just to finish off on New York there and the whole bullying thing, we told you that the New York State anti-bullying law, which is only going into effect, although it was passed 2 years ago in July, did not include charter schools. And now Danny O'Donnell has followed through, as he said he would, and gotten charter schools included in the regulations.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, Assemblymember O'Donnell.
All right, well, let's turn to some better news, and that is the major announcement by the NAACP last week that its board has passed a resolution backing marriage equality. Although when CBS first reported it, they said, well, the NAACP, stopped short of backing same-sex marriage because they didn't understand the term marriage equality.
Oh, God.
They thought they'd backed civil unions.
Well, actually,
or something.
it is.
They had to do a correction.
It is a term of art, and when Obama uttered it 2 weeks ago, it was the first time a president had uttered the term. It's our term.
Well,
it's our term.
Sure.
Most people call it gay marriage.
Or same-sex marriage or whatever.
Right.
But the NAACP correctly backed it as marriage equality, cited the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution as mandating equal protection of the laws.
And they said, look, we have a lot of religious people on our board and in our group, but we are a group that is here to defend the Constitution, and that's what this is all about. And Ben Jealous points out that his own parents, he's from a mixed race marriage, they had to get married in one city and travel, halfway across the, to avoid prosecution, all this kind of stuff. So,
Well, I was quite moved by someone talking about the fact that the NAACP was started in the very beginning of the 20th century, just 40 years after the end of the Civil War, at a time when It was illegal or had recently been illegal for slaves to marry. Preceding the laws against interracial marriage, slaves in particular could not marry at all. So there is a long history of this and a very three-dimensional history. But if you think the NAACP is late to this, you couldn't be more wrong. The NAACP endorsed the 1993 March on Washington for LGBT rights and sent speakers to that.
Well, they had great people like Julian Bond,
Yes,
of course, as the
who's
chair of the
endorsed
board,
this all along,
and others. And now the chair of the board is Rosalind Brock, who happens to be a Baptist minister, and she's totally behind this. Look, the NAACP has been doing gay stuff at their conferences and things like that for a long time.
Yep.
They've been allies of ours for a long time.
As has the National Council of La Raza and the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund, which also announced their support of the Obama
They're not
decision.
supportive of Obama, but they endorsed same-sex marriage before that.
Yes, and they now support Obama's announcement and decision.
Yeah.
So
You should thank the NAACP out there, folks.
Yes,
because,
please do.
I mean, by the way, for those of you who don't know, it is a very interracial organization. One of my friends, Chris Walling, his grandfather was one of the founders, and he's
that's a long time
he is a
story.
pale American.
Yeah.
Well,
Colorless American.
whatever. We're all some color.
And as we launch into marriage news, we should congratulate our New York City Council Speaker, Christine Quinn, and her new wife, Kim Catullo, attorney. They've been together for years.
About 10, 11 years, I think, that they've
made
been
it
together. Kim's a lawyer. Chris is the front runner for mayor of the city of New York, and
Yep.
there she is.
On the right in the dress.
And in the background, that's Judge Judith Kaye, formerly the head judge of the state of New York, who tried to let us have same-sex marriage rights years ago in the courts, but she was overruled by the rest of the court.
So,
not the whole rest of the
attending
court.
the ceremony, the governor of New York, both United States senators, the mayor of New York City, members of the United States Congress, the city council,
Yep.
everyone but us.
Only 300, but there was only 300 people there. And,
Yes.
I'm always relieved not to have
Relieved,
to go to a
yes,
wedding.
exactly.
But we wish them well.
We
In fact,
certainly
I already
do.
did wish. They live in our neighborhood. I saw
Yeah.
them getting into the car the other day, and I said, "Congratulations!" And the speaker even rolled down the window and said, "Thank you."
And we're happy about the fact that a United States Senate committee has passed the Domestic Partner Benefits and Obligations Act, which is an attempt to give equivalent benefits to domestic partners of federal employees who are civilians. We haven't gotten to the military yet. This is part of the piece-by-piece attempt to establish equal benefits. Now, this is passed a Senate committee only. No guarantees it'll pass the full Senate, let alone the ugly House of Representatives these days. But it's a nice step forward.
And a nice step forward in Maryland. Now, Maryland passed same-sex marriage.
The legislature. We're now waiting to see whether the right wing will get enough signatures to put a referendum on the ballot
We're waiting for
in
that.
November.
But in the meantime,
get rid of it
In the meantime,
before it goes into
the Court of Appeals in Maryland has ruled unanimously that Maryland will, as New York did before we had same-sex marriage here, recognize legal same-sex marriages from out of state. So all you're going to have to do is go to
District of Columbia.
or Buenos Aires, which we will get to later, to get married.
The court did it in a divorce case, a lesbian couple who had been married elsewhere and wanted to be divorced in Maryland, and the court said through the traditional system of comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, we, as other states, will recognize legal marriages from other jurisdictions, and barring a state constitutional amendment that says we can't, and we don't have that here.
But that's not what they're voting on in Maryland, is it? They're voting on just whether to accept the law.
Correct.
Yes.
But whether they do or not, the court and the Attorney General
You can get married elsewhere and be married in Maryland.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
You know. And congratulations to our old friend David Dunlop, an out gay reporter at the New York Times. Has done a lot. Used to be actually had the gay beat in the Times for a while when they had one.
He was also the architecture reporter for a long time.
He has married Scott Bain.
Volusia County, Florida, and other cities and towns there are establishing domestic partner registries. This will be official recognition for unmarried heterosexual or homosexual couples so that they can avail themselves of whatever benefits are available to them. And we have been waiting with bated breath to see what was going to happen with Dan Savage and Brian Brown. Dan Savage, you may remember, a couple of weeks ago gave a speech to high school students. He said there was a lot of nonsense. He used a different
BS
word.
Is the term he used
In the Bible,
in full.
Brian Brown challenged him to a debate and told him he could set the terms of the debate, and Dan Savage debated how he was going to do this, and he's finally come up with the answer. He has invited Brian Brown and his wife to come have dinner at Dan's house.
All expenses paid?
Yeah, what are they serving? With Dan and his husband and kids, and they will film it and put it on YouTube. They'll have a debate of an hour after dinner.
Who gets to edit it?
Not edited, unedited. But instead of doing a big public forum, he thought the right thing to do was invite them over for dinner and have a little kitchen table discussion.
Are they going to
that's a great idea.
Are they going to get pink gels like we do so that we look good?
Boxer Manny Pacquiao, who is a huge boxing star, Philippine, and also a member of Congress in the Philippines, got himself into a little tussle. He was interviewed by a sort of right-wing freelance journalist in quotes, who quoted him as being against marriage equality, but then said that, then quoted Leviticus and said Manny had said...
What he said was that he saying, look, it's against the Bible, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The interviewer then quotes the entire section of the Bible, which I've often cited, which says, it is an abomination in the Levitical code, and they shall be put to death, and puts this all in quotes. It gets picked up around the world. Manny has called for the death penalty for gays. Organizations pick this up. Get rid of him at Nike.
Yeah.
People are piling on. Within a day, he didn't call for the death penalty. It's unfortunate that he opposes same-sex marriage, like half the country, like Barack Obama until a week ago. So, again, is he a little cruder in his expression of it? Okay, but he didn't call for the death penalty. And I started posting this on Facebook and saying, hey, people, you're all piling on to this Filipino, and I think there was an element of racism in this.
Sure.
Then they said, well, okay, so he doesn't support the death penalty, but he still opposes us. I said, everybody does. I mean, not everybody does.
Well, actually, one of
do.
his great rivals, Floyd Mayweather, used the occasion to come out for marriage equality. Thank you, Floyd.
But Manny does not want us dead. He's got gay relatives. He's not a good guy. He's anti-gay.
He did a video for LGBT youth last year.
Yeah?
Yeah. But he opposes
But I mean, the
marriage
Courage
equality.
campaign couldn't have looked this up before they sent out a worldwide alert?
Please.
Or
hair trigger. But we're pretty sure that this politician in Mississippi does want the death penalty.
This guy's
for
name
us.
is Andy Gibson, not to be confused with somebody from the Bee Gees who's dead. He cited a Bible passage on Facebook calling for gay men, of course in this case,
Yes.
to be put to death, and refuses to apologize for the remark. It just goes on and on and on. Well, it's in the Bible.
It's like the North Carolina pastor who says, we're going to take these dirty homosexuals and we're going to put the lesbians in one electrified fence pen. All of us.
You can watch this other guy, Charles Worley, W-O-R-L-E-Y,
and
on
the
YouTube.
queer homosexuals in another pen.
And we're going to throw food into their various pens so that they can survive. But, as you know, since they can't reproduce, eventually they will die out.
Where do they think we come from?
We reproduce ourselves out of your bodies.
You're the
Straight
ones
people.
who give birth to us.
You do, mostly. Well,
Yeah.
once in a while gay people are, Anyway, but of course the other thing he says, a lot of the speech was about Obama. That's the trigger. I'm not going to vote for a baby killer and a homosexual lover. So now people are calling for an IRS investigation because he's using his pulpit. I don't know.
Never going to happen.
I don't know a pulpit in Harlem that doesn't. And the African American Church in particular is very big on having politicians in and endorsing them.
They all others. Are. Every last one of them is.
No, I grew up in the Catholic Church. Wait a minute. They did not endorse candidates from the pulpit. They didn't go out and tell us who to vote for.
They don't even let them take communion.
That's right. They don't let them in the first place.
And now they're suing the federal government over the contraception rules.
But the worst part about his sermon was that everybody was shouting amen while he was saying this stuff.
I don't think they were shouting amen in Dallas to the priest there, John Fisla, who was found guilty of hiring a hitman to kill the boy who accused him of sexual abuse at gunpoint. This priest held a gun to this kid's head, forced him to have sex, and when the boy talked about it, the priest hired a hitman.
Well, sounds violent and horrible. Well, also,
very horrible.
Sticking with our religious theme for this part of the show, you've got all the Catholic bishops suing under the First Amendment for their religious freedom against the Obama administration because reproductive stuff is going to be covered basically under the Affordable Health Care Act for everybody.
For employees who are doing things that are not religious.
Now, here's what I have to say.
If you're going to get in the business of running hospitals, then you should be covering your employees.
This is we have, look, I am all for religious freedom, but when you take government money to run a service, you have got to comply with all the laws. You got to treat everybody equally. Otherwise, you want your religious freedom, you go off and have your church and you can spew whatever crap you want. But you can't do it on my dime.
Or run wars either. Better religious news from New Hampshire, where Bishop Gene Robinson is retiring at the end of the year, and they have picked his replacement, a very gay-friendly, straight Reverend Robert Hirschfeld.
Oh, the gay guy didn't win?
No.
But they did include a gay person in the final three.
Exactly.
We saw the film on Bishop Robinson.
Love, Free or Die.
Which I thought was terrific.
I found it a little too religious.
Oh, okay. And I'm a dirty atheist myself.
Well,
but I was finding that I thought he was a terrific spokesperson for the cause and carried it through. You got a sense of the great physical bravery of him standing up there with. They actually talk about an incident where they caught a guy who had a sawed-off shotgun and was going there to shoot him.
Yes, and the film was made by our old activist pal Mackie Alston, who we may get in here eventually because the film is going to run in November on PBS. And he mentioned, and I agree with him, that the most, aside from the almost death scene there is one scene where Bishop Robinson gives a speech on Pride Day in New York at a church on
12th
Fifth
Street,
Avenue.
Fifth Avenue, yeah.
That is so fantastic.
Not what you would think.
No.
Because he's calling Christians to account and saying, we're going to be out here giving water to these people. I actually got my water from Bishop Robinson that day when I was covering the parade. But, we're going to be out here giving water. We're not doing something for them. We're the guilty ones. This is part of our expiation and everything.
Really, really stunning speech. Really,
tremendous.
The whole movie was
tremendous. Very thoughtful guy. We've had him on the show. And
all right, let's. It is graduation time, as we've mentioned, and we don't have a lot of time if we're going to get to our guests. So we want to tell you the story of this kid in Las Vegas, a transgender young man.
Francis DeLog Jr.,
who
biologically a girl, but identifies as a boy and presents that way. Now, and wanted to walk with the boys on graduation day. So let's watch this report.
Yes, let's do.
A transgender student is speaking out tonight following a decision by school administrators to define the teen biologically. The young person who feels like a boy doesn't want to graduate as a girl. I-Team reporter Colleen McCarty has the story.
So the young person we're about to meet came out as transgender to family and friends last year. Although Francis DeLog Jr. is still biologically a girl, Francis self-identifies as a boy and presents that way. But administrators at Shadow Ridge High School recognize Francis the she, not the he, and initially insisted Francis conform accordingly on graduation day.
All right, you've got your shoes right here. I think I'm pants. Got your tie, your vest.
For most of Francis DeLog Jr.'s life, the now 18-year-old has struggled to find what fits.
Shirt is huge.
From the dresses worn as a little girl, to the boys' jeans in the 5th grade, to the androgynous outfits of Francis's early teens. But now as a senior at Shadow Ridge High School, Francis has stopped trying on an identity.
The men look so cute.
The tuxedo instead of a prom dress now is not a fashion statement. It's a reflection of who Francis is.
It took a while for me to eventually tell people I got comfortable with the feeling.
Francis came out to family and friends last year as transgender, meaning that although Francis is biologically a girl, Francis self-identifies as a boy. And while some transgender students, according to a national survey, liken school halls to a social minefield, Francis explains the experience has been largely ambush-free. That is, until a school administrator recently insisted Francis walk with the girls at graduation.
I explained to her I'm transgender, and she's like, doesn't matter. Whatever's on the paper, that's whatever side you're going to go on.
The Clark County School District has no specific policies related to transgender students, relying instead on a more individualized approach, explains School Board President Linda Young.
Each case is a little different. Each student's a little different. I think it has to be discussed in light of what's going to be comfortable for all involved, because it's just not that student, but the other students as well.
There should be policies.
But transgender advocates like Jane Heenan of Gender Justice Nevada insist clear-cut guidelines help to ensure consistent outcomes.
It should not depend on an individual school or an individual person, an individual superintendent. These are policies that should be in place, not just for the sake of students at this point, or for the sake of staff and others employed there, but because it's the law.
Indeed, when the I-Team raised Francis's concern at the district level, it reversed the administrator's decision, based largely, it said, on legal advice, noting, quote, the district wants all students to feel welcome in their education environment and therefore will make reasonable accommodations. Yet back on campus, the administrator remains reluctant to confirm Francis's place among his male peers, a fit determined by choice.
There you go.
Instead of biology.
I want to leave as who I am. I want to graduate high school as who I really am.
I'm told Francis got the thumbs up this morning from school administrators at Shadow Ridge to walk with the boys. Francis hopes that by sharing this story, it will start the conversation about whether or not the district is meeting the needs of transgender students.
Let's hope it does. High school's tough enough.
What struck me about that, congratulations, Francis, for sticking up for yourself, is the sensitivity of the reporters and reporting it. It was great.
We're getting there. In Hardin County, Tennessee, the high school is trying to bar students from wearing rainbows on their clothes because it implies sex.
Sex?
Rainbows. So
I'll have to remember that.
The Southern Poverty Law Center has told them they can't do that. And the University of Pennsylvania has just announced that it is grossing up benefits. It's the largest private employer in Pennsylvania, and they are going to make sure that gay employees do not have to pay more taxes to get benefits.
Great. Congratulations to Paul Rusconi. He's a very famous Malibu photographer. He has two twin daughters, very young, and some relatives didn't like the fact that he was gay, and they trumped up rape charges against him. And for a year, the kids were taken away from him. And then they just found out that they were just these nuts that were making this story up. Now they may face prosecution.
And rape is a real issue in prison, of course. The Department of Justice has just issued regulations to implement the Prison Rape Elimination Act. They are mandating staff training, case-by-case review of transgender prison assignment.
There's a lot of gay angles to this story.
Exactly. And the goal is to prevent, detect, and respond to sexual abuse. But I just read a story in the paper today of how much women are raped in prison by prison guards, made pregnant.
This country's prison system is out of control.
It is.
A lot of times being run by private people.
Yeah, more and more so.
We've got a good ruling from the Department of Justice accepting the EEOC ruling that trans bias is covered by Title VII.
Yeah. And we're celebrating Harvey Milk's birthday today as we tape. The Long Beach, California has just broken ground for a Harvey Milk Park, including a replica of his soapbox. Dallas is doing a celebration. No, we don't have anything in New York. And in San Diego, the city council has okayed a giant rainbow flag to fly in the Hillcrest neighborhood above Harvey Milk Street.
And we talked about gay people being excluded from juries, and a reviewer sent me an article that says only a few states have taken any action to prevent government officials from doing that. And we told you about that horrible Marine killing of a gay Marine in Washington, and the Michael Poth who did that has been charged with murder as a hate crime.
International news. Excellent news from Malawi in Africa, where there's a new president, Joyce Banda, who took over. She was the vice president after the ruling president got sick or died or something. Anyway, she has announced in her speech in taking over that she wants to repeal the anti-gay laws in Malawi. That is unusual and wonderful.
And excellent news from the Pan American Health Organization, which has said that therapies to change sexual orientation lack medical justification and threaten health.
Celebrated all over the world, but not so much in the United States, is Idaho, the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. And they had a celebration in St. Petersburg, Russia, a big demonstration. Actually, people came out pro and con, and there were arrests, and it got ugly again there. There was a statement by the U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, in support of Idaho. 95 countries worldwide celebrated. However, in the midst of this, Moscow Pride was banned again this year.
Buenos Aires has authorized marriage equality for tourists. We also have that in New York, by the way.
But you can go to Buenos Aires
and many other
and
places.
Get married.
Some places it's hard to get married on the...
There is a fascinating story in the new issue of The New Yorker, this one with graduates adrift on icebergs, about corrective rape in South Africa, a story by Charlene Hunter-Gault.
Former PBS NewsHour.
Yeah, very interesting and extensive story about this, and includes the mention of the fact that the traditional leaders in South Africa, who are a discrete, identified group who advise the government on things, are calling for the repeal of the sexual orientation non-discrimination parts of the Constitution.
I hope that's difficult to do.
Hundreds of LGBT activists marched in cities all over South Africa to protest this attempt. No telling where it will go. The ANC is against that, but man, that's scary stuff.
Right.
In Queensland, Australia, a member of Parliament, Bob Hatter, says his party lost 15 seats by running an anti-gay TV ad. If only that would happen here.
He didn't watch the ad beforehand. And the polls, by the way, are saying in terms of Obama coming out for same-sex marriage, has either had no effect or a slight bump up.
Yeah. And we have a picture from the Disney Resort in Tokyo where they have announced that they are allowing same-sex marriages. They're not legal in Japan, but the hotel will be happy to take your money. They won't let them happen in the chapel, but if you pay thousands of dollars,
but it's not illegal either.
No.
Well, I mean,
absolutely not.
Alabama tried to ban ministers from even doing it, for show
Okay.
or for God.
AIDS news?
Well,
Or do you-
we got our new Aura Quick home HIV test that's been approved by an FDA, recommended by an FDA advisory committee.
Yeah, not approved by the FDA yet. GMHC, Gay Men's Health Crisis, has endorsed its accuracy, but pointed out you need a 24-hour hotline for counseling of people, you need referrals available for treatment, you need a website that has full information, because, your partner could test you in your sleep.
Yeah, well, it's true. By the way, I went to the GMHC AIDS Walk, not as a walker, but as a reporter this week. 45,000 people marching, one of the most diverse crowds I'd seen ever. Anybody who thinks nobody gives a damn about AIDS anymore, I realize the activism isn't the same, but it was very moving to talk to these people.
They raised millions of dollars.
Well, it's also just that people are concerned and do want to talk about it. So good.
All right. Quick run through of entertainment news. A viewer pointed out that our statement that Tom Gable coming out as transgender last week as a punk rocker was not the first, that in fact...
Jane County.
30 years ago, Wayne County became Jane County.
Right. Born Wayne Rogers. Would have had to change that name anyway.
Stonewall rioter, Andy Warhol actress.
Yeah.
All right. But meanwhile, Orthodox Jewish rapper Y Love has come out as gay. He's Puerto Rican and Ethiopian and converted to Orthodox Judaism. He tried reparative therapy, and now he is free, out, and happy.
And look, we do mourn the loss of Donna Summer, who was certainly a key figure in gay disco for many, many years, despite the fact that she did have that interlude where she was making some anti-gay comments.
She disputed that she did. She was quoted as saying AIDS was divine punishment for an immoral lifestyle. It lost her a lot of bookings.
She was the queen
of
disco.
She claimed she didn't say it or apologized or whatever and clawed her way back.
And I did see this musical called February House, which is all these famous writers which were together in a house in Brooklyn in 1940, and it's all about bright, creative people like Auden and Carson McCullers and everything.
And Gypsy Rose Lee.
But to me, they were cartoons. If you're going to write about these kind of people, your lyrics need to be a lot smarter. It got a nice review out of town at the Long Wharf by the Times, but I'm sorry.
Big news today as we tape. The out gay superhero North Star of Marvel Comics is going to propose to his boyfriend Kyle. And DC Comics is fighting back. They have said they're going to have one of their superheroes come out. We don't know who yet.
It's all because of that Obama.
But you remember the transgender Miss Universe contestant in Canada, Jenna Talikova?
Yes, sure.
Well, they held the Canada Miss Universe pageant last weekend. She did not win. She was a finalist, one of the 12, but here's what she won. Miss Congeniality.
That's great.
And on that note, let's turn to our guest.
And joining us now is Jonathan D. Katz. Jonathan, you've been through the wars, you've co-coordinated the Larry Kramer Initiative for Lesbian and Gay Studies at Yale.
Definitely a war.
You were chair of the first Department of Lesbian and Gay Studies in the United States at City College of San Francisco, and you wrote the book about the Hide-Seek exhibit, Hide-Seek, Difference and Desire in American Portraiture, which won the Stonewall Award. And the exhibit won Best Exhibit in the United States from the International Art Critics Association. We're pretty honored to have you.
Well, thank you.
And now that you're chief curator of this Leslie Lohman Museum of Gay and Lesbian Art, the first in the United States, and the president of the board there too, tell us about why that's historically significant.
Well, I'm thrilled that we finally have a place that we can call our own, that we can actually put on exhibitions of the kind that the rest of the museum world unfortunately hasn't done. It actually kind of saddens me at the same time that I'm happy we have this museum. I wish we didn't have to have a museum. I wish our lives and our histories were auditioned in the mainstream institutions across the country, and especially, you would expect, in a place like Manhattan. But they're not.
Where you go to the Metropolitan Museum and they don't even note the gayness of the Greek and Roman stuff.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
On the cards.
And right, they just renovated, I mean, maybe 10 years ago, renovated that gallery, but certainly within the period where you'd expect them to be sensitive to these kinds of issues. And the irony is that the curator of that institution has offered us LGBTQ tours of it orally, but is not willing to put it on the wall.
Outrageous.
It is outrageous.
Well, they didn't put up Gertrude Stein's collaboration with the Nazis either, so, you know.
But some of this, I suspect, came about and is in the news because of the success of the Hide-Seek exhibition. You were here, of course, when you were putting that together, and that was beginning, and it went through the whole censorship thing with the National Portrait Gallery by Martin Sullivan, who has now left there, I'm happy to see. But the exhibition, which was originally scheduled for just the National Portrait Gallery because of its notoriety, ended up also at the Brooklyn Museum and the museum in Tacoma. I want an update on Hide-Seek.
Sure. I mean, it's really interesting because not only did the show close in Washington, but all the works were dispersed back to the original collector.
Right.
So what was striking about this, and Brooklyn and Tacoma did this, is to actually reconstitute the show, send the trucks back, pull the work back, and move it both to Brooklyn and then across the country to Tacoma. It was a massive logistical investment, and they did it out of a fundamental belief that this show needed to be seen.
And because it was hugely popular. So tell us about the crowds that it did draw and the reactions.
It was amazing. I mean, it set attendance records at the Smithsonian, and it set attendance records at Brooklyn. It's still ongoing at Tacoma, so we're going to see if it sets attendance records, but I suspect it will.
Well, we certainly highly recommend people who find themselves in the Tacoma area go see it, because it is a stunning show.
Thank you.
I finally saw it in Brooklyn. Thank heavens with the Wojnarowicz
Absolutely
video
intact.
restored.
Yeah. No, and the great thing about the show, we had a series of programs, and I remember one particular, I think they were called First Fridays, where the museum doesn't actually charge anything. And we were able to clock between, now this was the museum as a whole, but most of these people were coming into the exhibition. We were able to clock 11,000 people entering between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night, which came out to more than one person entering the exhibition per second.
Now, this, of course, was a show of LGBT-themed art or art by LGBT artists, or in some cases.
Yeah, it was basically about the way in which the very idea of which we have today, that there is sort of the straight world and there's the gay world, was not operative for the vast majority of American artistic history, that these worlds were absolutely fundamentally interconnected.
So talk about what the vision and the mission and the criteria is for the Leslie Lohman Museum of Gay and Lesbian Art down there in
Soho on Worcester Street. 26
Worcester Street. And it's a remarkable institution in part because it literally dates from Stonewall. Charles Leslie, actually the summer of the Stonewall riots, started organizing privately in his own apartment, along with his lover Fritz Lohman, these exhibitions of, at those days, gay art. And those exhibitions floored him because even though publicity wasn't very good and he didn't really know that many people, hundreds, if not thousands of people came to these initial exhibitions. And he realized that there was, in fact, a hunger. So he decided that he would continue the foundation, and for many, many years it was in a small underground space. Then it would move to this beautiful purpose-built gallery space. And then remarkably, just last year, the New York Museum Association accredited us as a full-scale museum. And with that, we are actually beginning to grow quite substantially because, among other things, Charles Leslie made us a gift of unprecedented proportion. I think no art gift in the country for LGBTQ things has approached what he gave us.
Now, we have a series of pictures in a couple of batches. The first one, half a dozen pictures from an exhibition a couple of months back, the Creating a Queer Museum.
Yeah.
Tell us about this and what we're seeing. We're going to start running these.
I mean, these are just small snippets of the permanent collection. The permanent collection includes 6,000 plus works of art.
Wow.
It goes back, as you can see here, this is Van Gluden, who was one of the most significant photographers of the early days, literally started practicing around the time the word homosexual was coined. So he's literally one of the first homosexual photographers.
So we would call this a homoerotic picture of a young boy.
Absolutely.
19th century.
It's 19th century. And in fact, Van Gluden set up shop in essence, in Sicily, because there was a lot of heat in Europe because of the Oscar Wilde trials.
Right.
So Van Gluden was a sort of aristocratic figure. He had money. He was able to go to Sicily, and there he created a kind of perfectly situated homoerotic paradise where, lots of young men were available for the class that could travel there.
All right, well, let's look at the next Horst male nude.
And these are remarkable because, of course, this is really the first moment that you start to see these aggressively modernist images.
And this is 1952.
Yeah. And we're very pleased to be able to really chart the development of the lesbian and gay movement through its visual culture.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the next one.
Next.
Some women.
And this is Jeb. With
a stereotypical lesbian shot of women doing car repair.
Absolutely.
Well, Queen Elizabeth did it during the war.
Well, this was 1978.
But I want to point out that when this shot was made, it wasn't yet stereotypical.
Oh, okay.
And next, I think everybody will recognize. Yes.
Yes, a beautiful Mapplethorpe. And, the museum is rich in, for example, Andy Warhol's sex series. It has a number of works from German Weimar era, and it has a mission to continue to collect contemporary art today.
And to be a research facility.
It has a library, it has an archive, it's collecting a lot of sort of new material every day, and it's got a series of forthcoming shows that are really museum quality exhibitions. They're going to be in part intended as a kind of response to what a lot of New York museums have not been doing. So, for example, there was a Paul Thek exhibition, very widely acclaimed Paul Thek exhibition at the Whitney Museum, and it did mention that Paul Thek was gay, but I'm getting the sense that the new homophobia is the one that says, oh, he's gay or she's a lesbian, but doesn't give that any import to the work, right? So it's just the same as being born in Poughkeepsie. It doesn't mean very much.
Right.
Hey, I went to school in Poughkeepsie. Wait a minute.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, and in the Steins exhibit, they don't although they obviously feature Alice and Gertrude, they don't really get into what the import of their relationship was.
No, and it's really troubling. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're actually pulling together some early Paul Theks, which were not in the Whitney exhibition, which make very, very clear the import of the homoerotic universe in which he traveled. Images of his boyfriend of the time, images of his social world, including Peter Hujar, with whom he was lovers. I mean, serendipitously, Paul Thek happened to know many of the great artists of the period, and that needs to be documented because that was a gay world.
Well, and it's what you did in Hide-Seek, too. You would show artists in the full three-dimensionality of their relationships and the work and how all that played out, whereas more traditional museums would put this stuff up without any context.
Absolutely. We're doing, for example, a Don Bachardy show. Don Bachardy, widely sort of known, but not very often seen in New York.
This was the partner of Christopher
Isherwood,
and
right.
Still around.
Still around. And we're doing we're going to be showing a remarkable series of paintings that, with really remarkable discipline, Bachardy made every day as Christopher lay dying. And they're incredibly moving.
They are. I've seen some of those.
He had a great exhibit at the Portrait Gallery in Britain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also have an exhibit coming up, Art AIDS America, which is coming in from Tacoma.
Right. Now, this is not with the museum. This is an exhibition that I'm doing that will be at the Tacoma Museum, and then it'll be traveling to several East Coast museums.
Okay. Sorry, I got off.
No, that's all right.
A little there.
Yeah.
Let's just show the last couple of shots from the past exhibit.
This is a fabulous painting by George Quaintance,
1956.
And what's remarkable about it is Quaintance is one of the first artists to really explore and develop this kind of style of homoerotic illustration, and this is one of his masterworks. So we're really pleased to have this.
For those of you listening to the podcast, this is a nice beefcake.
Very nice beefcake.
Watch the show online. Blip
It's
TV.
It's well worth seeing.
And the last one by
and then a
Cindy.
charming shot of Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon.
By Cindy Warwick.
Yeah, absolutely.
These were the first women married in California.
And indeed,
veteran activists.
In some sense, right, the founders of Daughters of Bilitis, and every bit as significant for LGBT liberation as Harvey Milk.
Well, let's move on to the show that is currently showing at the museum, which is The Piers, Art and Sex Along the New York Waterfront. And this show is up through July 7th.
And this is
can be seen right now at the Leslie Lohman Museum at 26
The
Worcester
New York
Street.
Piers, before they were sanitized parks, were gay playgrounds, gay male playgrounds.
So the first one we're going to show is by Stanley Steller, Mike Nomad, West Side Highway, 1980.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I really want to stress about this exhibition is that it speaks to exactly why we founded the museum, because this is an exhibition of a fundamentally important period in American culture generally, in queer culture absolutely, and it's one that everybody talks about as being sort of the founding moment for what would become the East Village art world. But no one has yet ever showed it because the images are sort of sexually fairly forward, and for most museums, right, therefore definitionally.
Not that one so much, but let's get to some more. The Frank Hallam, explain this to us, Filming Pompeii, New York.
Yeah, this is the actual making of a film, and what is remarkable about the Piers is that everybody who was part of it understood that there was something extraordinary about this moment and documented it in a way that really was a gift to history.
Now they'd come along and arrest you and say, "Where's your permit?"
Absolutely, but at this moment, what they're doing, I mean, I caught. I'm unfortunately only caught the tail end of the Piers, but I was struck by the fact that you could have. I mean, it was an open-air sex supermarket.
There was a nude beach at the Piers.
There was a nude beach.
Let's get to some more pictures so we can actually show some of that. Well, this is a cartoon picture that's a little explicit.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we mean about sort of the way in which this was a culture that really created, as you can see here, an entire sort of visual universe that was gay.
All right. And next, we're moving these along. Next is something by Andreas Sturzing.
Yes.
Now we're getting to the actual sex in the piers.
And here you can see, again, these are, right, the abandoned 19th century piers, these warehouses that were colonized by gay men on certain summer evenings. There were thousands of men in
One
these
of those
places.
men is David Wojnarowicz.
Indeed.
The famous artist.
And David Wojnarowicz, whose work was censored, in fact, from Hide-Seek, David...
but not by you.
But not by me. Was one of the people who worked very hard to decorate the interiors.
And in fact, this is another shot of those interior murals on the piers. From the outside, they just look like abandoned warehouses, but the life going on inside them and around them is what's amazing.
And we're lucky to have this because, of course, this is all now destroyed.
Keep going
We're
with
down
these
to our last
pictures.
minute. We'll keep showing these things as we go, and we can talk as we see the slides. There's people sunbathing.
And there you can see, right in the middle of downtown New York, naked people, and where you had naked gay men, you had things happening.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Actually,
Sunbathing, I'm sure that's what you're
I was brought
referring
down
to.
there by a Catholic priest friend who loved to go naked. I always thought it was a little less erotic when everybody was naked, as opposed to a little cover-up. I'm just saying. Hide seek.
Ashakun so
Well, you know, I kept my trunks on. But I mean, how is the museum being received? What are the reactions that you're getting?
You have 20 seconds.
The museum is getting massive attendance, so this is really thrilling.
And opening up a conversation
And
that
opening
has
up a
never been
conversation.
allowed.
And one of the things that needs to...
We're almost out. But,
Okay.
But
Finish your sentence.
No, simply that, you know, we are still in a city in which the New York Historical Society has never once referenced gay or lesbian community.
they honored Henry Kissinger.
All right, the Leslie Lohman Museum of Gay and Lesbian Art, 26 Worcester Street.
Thank you, Jonathan D. Katz, for being with us.
Thank you.
And we will be back next week. See you then.